But when I got promoted to manage my boyfriend, I thought he'd be proud. But instead, he started destroying everything I worked for, and somehow HR blamed me. Let me tell you what happened when I got promoted. It was a Thursday morning, one of those LA mornings that felt too perfect to be real. The sunlight hit my desk just right, my coffee still warm, and my boss, Dana, called me into her office with that half smile that always meant something big was coming. I'd been working at Maven Marketing for almost 3 years, late nights, endless client calls, surviving on caffeine and fake smiles, but I loved it. So when Dana looked at me and said, "Emma, you've earned this. You're our new campaign manager," my heart nearly stopped. It was the promotion I'd been dreaming of, the one that finally meant I wasn't just the assistant. But then she said something that made me freeze. "You'll be managing the creative team starting Mondays." That includes Ryan. Ryan, my boyfriend, we'd been together for almost 2 years. He was charming, creative, and the reason I'd even applied at Maven in the first place. He'd been there longer, and honestly, I thought he'd get promoted before me. So when I told him that night, over sushi at our favorite little place on Sunset, I expected him to be happy. He smiled at first, said, "Wow, babe, that's amazing," and clinked his glass against mine. But then there was this silence, the kind that sticks to your skin. He looked down, fiddled with his chopsticks, and said, "So, I'll be reporting to you now?" I laughed it off, tried to make it sound like no big deal. "Just professionally," I said. "We'll keep it chill at work. You're still the best at what you do." But I could feel the shift right then, like a small crack forming somewhere between us. That night, I stayed up staring at the ceiling, replaying his face in my mind. I wanted to believe everything would stay the same, that love could handle a little professional imbalance. The next morning, he left early for work without saying much, and when I got to the office, people were already whispering, "Did you hear Emma's the new manager? Isn't Ryan her boyfriend? That's gonna be awkward." I smiled through it, pretended I didn't care, but deep down I could feel something changing. Not in the office, in us. It's funny how success can feel lonely when the person you love isn't standing beside you but behind you, watching, calculating. And I didn't know it then, but that tiny crack I felt over dinner, it was just the beginning of everything falling apart. What would you do if you got promoted above your partner at work? Celebrate it or keep it quiet to protect the relationship? The first week as manager felt like walking on glass. Everyone congratulated me, smiles, handshakes, the usual office buzz. But underneath it all, there was a subtle shift. People started watching how Ryan and I interacted. Every time I walked past his desk, I could feel eyes following us. Ryan acted normal at first, or maybe I convinced myself he did. He showed up early, stayed focused, and even joked around in team meetings. But when we got home, the silence said more than words ever could. I'd ask, "How was your day?" He'd shrug, say, "You tell me." "You're my boss now." I laughed the first few times, but it stopped being funny after a while. The second week, we had our first campaign review meeting. Dana wanted me to present the new pitch to a luxury fashion brand, a huge opportunity for our team. I prepped slides, scripts, and visual drafts. I'd worked on it for days. When I sent the presentation to Ryan for final creative tweaks, he replied, "Got it. We'll polish tonight." The next morning during the client rehearsal, the file wouldn't open. It was corrupted. Half the design work was gone. I tried not to panic. Things like this happen, right? But when I looked at Ryan across the table, he didn't look surprised. He just sat there, quiet, eyes fixed on the screen like he'd seen it coming. After the meeting, I pulled him aside. "Ryan, what happened to the file?" He shrugged. "Maybe your system crashed." "I told you not to work from that old laptop." It was such a small thing, but something about the way he said it, casual, almost smug, made my stomach twist. That night, I stayed at the office late, redoing the entire presentation from scratch. Dana stopped by before leaving and said, "Don't overwork yourself, Emma. You're doing great." I smiled and thanked her, but I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan. He didn't call, didn't text. When I finally got home near midnight, he was already asleep on the couch, TV still on, a half-empty beer bottle beside him. The next morning, he said, "You're obsessed with work lately." I said, "I'm trying to keep things from falling apart." He just muttered, "Maybe they already are." That line stayed in my head all day. At work, I started noticing things, small things, deadlines missed, emails not sent, files misplaced, but only on projects that Ryan touched. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. I wanted to believe him. But deep down, I think I already knew something wasn't right. If your partner started acting distant and careless at work right after your promotion, would you confront them or wait and watch? It's strange how betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just leaks, one small drop at a time. By the third week, those little mistakes started to add up. Missing slides, wrong data, client emails sent late, always from projects Ryan handled. And every time I asked, he had a reason ready. The system lagged. "I thought you already sent it." Oh, I must have misunderstood. He said it so calmly that I almost believed him. Dana started noticing too. She called me into her office one afternoon and said, "Emma, what's going on with your team? The fashion campaign's behind schedule." I wanted to tell her the truth, that something felt off, that maybe Ryan wasn't being as careful as he used to be, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. It sounded too personal, too messy, so I just said, "I'll handle it." When I came home that night, Ryan was sitting at the dining table, laptop open, watching some YouTube video about how to stay competitive in relationships. I laughed nervously and asked, "What's that supposed to mean?" He looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "Just learning how to keep up with my boss." He said it like a joke, but the bitterness in his tone was impossible to miss. The next morning, I found out he'd skipped a meeting with our client without telling me. I had to cover for him in front of Dana and the entire team. My face burned with embarrassment as I said, "He's probably dealing with a software issue." After the meeting, I called him. He didn't pick up. Then I got a text. "Don't micromanage me, Emma. You're not my babysitter." I just stared at the message for a long time, feeling that familiar ache crawl up my throat. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to prove him wrong. I just wanted him to be proud of me again. That evening, I confronted him gently. "Ryan, I'm trying to make this work, both of us, but you're making it hard." He sighed, ran his hand through his hair, and said, "Maybe it's hard because you forgot we're supposed to be a team, not a hierarchy." And there it was. The truth I'd been avoiding. He didn't see me as his partner anymore. He saw me as competition. Later that night, while I was finishing reports, I overheard him on the phone. His voice was low but clear. Yeah, she thinks she's untouchable now. Let her fall on her face. Then we'll see. I froze. He hung up before I could hear who he was talking to. And for the first time, I wondered if the man I loved was secretly hoping to see me fail. If you caught your partner saying something like that, would you confront them immediately or pretend you didn't hear and gather proof first? The next few weeks felt like walking through fog. Ryan and I barely spoke at home anymore. When we did, it was sharp, short, defensive. At work, I pretended everything was fine. Smiles in the hallways, polite good mornings, fake laughter during team calls. But every time I looked at him, I could feel that cold wall between us. Then, one Friday morning, I got an email from HR subject line. Request for clarification, internal performance review. My stomach dropped. It said they'd received multiple reports about leadership concerns and communication breakdowns within my team. They wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss. I reread the email at least 10 times. Leadership concerns? Communication breakdowns? I'd been killing myself to hold everything together. That same afternoon, Dana called me into her office. Her tone was gentle but distant. Emma, HR's been hearing some feedback. I know you're under pressure, but I need you to make sure your team feels supported. I asked, what feedback? She hesitated. Some people think your management style is controlling. Others say you take credit for their work. I couldn't even breathe for a second. Take credit for their work? I asked her if Ryan had said anything. Dana just sighed. You know I can't disclose that. But I didn't need her to. I already knew. That night, I went home and tried to talk to him. Ryan, did you say something to HR about me? He didn't even look up from his phone. They asked for feedback. I told the truth. You've changed, Emma. You think you're better than everyone? My chest tightened. No, I've been trying to survive in a role that's twice as hard because of how everyone treats me, or especially you. He scoffed. You wanted power, now you've got it. Enjoy it? I didn't know what to say. There was nothing left to defend. The next week, little rumors started floating around that I'd screamed at a designer during a meeting, that I threatened to replace someone. None of it true, but in an office full of whispers. Truth doesn't matter, only perception. I started catching people giving me that polite half smile, the one that says, I've heard something about you but won't say it. And Ryan? He played innocent, sweet, cooperative, calm, helping everyone, smiling in the hallways like he was the one holding the team together while I fell apart. At night, he'd still come home, still kiss my forehead, still ask, rough day? As if he wasn't the reason. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just jealous. He was rewriting the story and making me the villain in it. If someone you loved started turning people against you at work, would you expose them? Or let them think you don't know and plan quietly? The HR meeting was scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m. I didn't sleep the night before. I kept running through everything in my head. Every meeting, every project, every conversation, trying to find the exact moment things turned against me. I couldn't. It felt like being blamed for a storm you didn't see coming. When I walked into the HR office, the air felt heavy. Two people were already there, Marissa from HR, and a man I didn't know, probably legal. They smiled politely, that fake kind of polite that comes with hidden questions. Marissa said, Emma, thanks for coming. We just want to clear up some concerns raised by your team. I nodded, trying to keep my voice calm. Of course, she glanced at her notes. There have been claims that you've been overly critical in team meetings, that you've taken credit for work done by others, and that your communication style has made some employees uncomfortable. I felt my chest tighten. That's not true. I've done everything I can to support this team. If anything, I've been covering for their mistakes. The man beside her spoke for the first time. Would you say anyone on your team might be intentionally undermining your work? The question hung in the air. My first instinct was to say Ryan's name, but I couldn't, because saying it out loud meant admitting that my boyfriend, the person who once held my hand during sleepless nights and believed in my dreams, was now the one destroying them. So I just said, I don't know. Marissa scribbled something down, nodded, and said, we'll continue reviewing feedback. In the meantime, just try to keep communication open with your team. When I walked out, I saw Ryan in the break room, laughing with two designers. He looked up at me, just for a second, and I swear there was something cold in his eyes, like satisfaction. That afternoon, Dana pulled me aside. HR says you might be under stress. Maybe take a day or two off. I forced a smile. I'm fine. She gave me that pitying look. Emma, you don't seem fine. I went home early, sat on the couch, staring at the floor. When Ryan came in, he acted surprised. You left work early? HR wanted to talk, I said quietly. He froze for half a second, then said, about what? You tell me, I whispered. He looked away. Don't start blaming me, Emma. Maybe people just don't like how you've been acting. It hurt because a part of me still loved him, even while knowing he was the one setting the fire. That night, I didn't cry. I just sat in silence, realizing that the man sleeping beside me was my biggest threat. If HR started investigating you based on lies, and you suspected your partner was behind it, would you expose them or keep quiet to protect your job? After that HR meeting, something inside me shifted. I stopped waiting for people to see the truth. I started looking for it myself. At first, I didn't even know where to begin, but I knew Ryan was careful. He wasn't the kind of person who'd leave obvious traces. His sabotage was subtle. A deleted email here, a missing slide there, just enough to make me look careless. So, I began keeping copies of everything. Every file, every email chain, every note from Dana. I even started sending myself drafts from my work email to my personal one, quietly building a digital trail. One night, I stayed back late after everyone left. The office was quiet, just the hum of the AC and the city lights flickering through the windows. I opened our shared project folder and checked the edit history of the fashion campaign files. That's when I saw it. Ryan's name, listed multiple times in the revision logs, right before key slides were deleted or changed, sometimes at 2 a.m., sometimes minutes after I'd finished my edits. I took screenshots of everything. My hands were shaking. The next morning, I walked into the office and saw Ryan laughing with the team like nothing happened. When his eyes met mine, he smiled. that soft, charming smile that used to make me melt. But now, it just felt fake. Later that day, Dana emailed everyone about a new client presentation. Ryan volunteered to handle the visuals. I decided to test him. I uploaded a dummy draft with intentional typos. Nothing major, just enough to notice. By the next morning, those typos were fixed, but half the important slides were gone again. That was the confirmation I needed. I wanted to confront him right there in front of everyone, but my chest tightened at the thought. I still loved him. I still remembered the version of him who used to make me laugh on long nights, who brought me coffee when I forgot to eat, who believed I was capable of anything. But that man wasn't here anymore. That night, I waited for him to fall asleep. Then I quietly unlocked his laptop. Same password he'd used for years. Sunset 2020. I wasn't proud of it. But when I opened his email, my heart sank. There were messages between him and two of my team members. Short, discreet, strategic. Things like, don't worry, I'll make sure she looks bad. And if she messes this up, Dana might rethink the manager role. I sat there, staring at the screen, my chest burning. He wasn't just sabotaging me, he was recruiting others to help. And suddenly I realized I wasn't just fighting for my job. I was fighting to prove I wasn't the villain in a story he was writing behind my back. If you discovered clear proof that your partner was secretly sabotaging you at work, would you confront them immediately or save it and plan your next move carefully? I didn't sleep after finding those emails. My mind kept spinning with the same question. How far was he willing to go? I realized then that if I just accused him, he'd twist everything, make me look paranoid, emotional. I'd already seen how easily people believed him, so I decided to be patient. The next morning, I got ready like it was any other day. I smiled, made breakfast, even kissed him goodbye. Inside, I was trembling, but on the surface, I had to look steady. At the office, I acted normal too. Joined small talks, laughed at bad jokes, thanked people for their work. I needed everyone relaxed, unsuspecting. My plan was simple. I'd create a fake project file, a high-priority presentation titled Client Strategy Confidential. It looked real, filled with fake slides, fake data, fake internal notes. I placed it in our shared drive, right where I knew Ryan would find it. Then I waited. By evening, the file had been accessed. The timestamp showed his login. He even renamed it to Final Version. I didn't touch it after that. Instead, I quietly told Dana that I'd like to do a team review of the new draft tomorrow morning. She agreed. That night, Ryan came home like nothing had happened. He joked about ordering pizza, asked about my day, leaned over to kiss my cheek. I almost laughed from how good he was at pretending. While he showered, I checked my email from my phone. The final version he'd uploaded now had a big red error page on the first slide. I'd built it into the decoy file, hidden in the code. When opened during a presentation, it displayed one message. Unauthorized edits detected. File owner notified that I imagined his face when it popped up. The next morning, we gathered in the conference room. The team was there, Dana too. Ryan opened his laptop and projected the final version, and right on cue, that bright red screen appeared. Everyone froze. Dana frowned. What is this? Ryan blinked, stuttered. I don't know, maybe a glitch. I kept my expression calm. That's odd, I said softly. The system only shows that if someone without authorization edits the document. Dana turned toward me. Who had access? I said, only me and Ryan. The room went silent. Ryan tried to laugh it off. She must have set me up. But his voice cracked. The designers exchanged looks. Dana's expression turned sharp. We'll look into this, she said. After the meeting, Ryan pulled me aside. His voice dropped. What are you trying to do? I met his eyes and said quietly, I'm just letting the truth show itself. He didn't speak after that, just stared at me, cold and furious. For the first time in weeks, I felt calm, because now it wasn't just my word against his. The story was finally starting to change. If someone betrayed you but still acted innocent to your face, would you expose them publicly or let them destroy themselves with their own actions? 2 days after that meeting, HR called me back in. Only this time, the tone was different. Marissa didn't smile. She gestured toward the chair across from her and said, Emma, we've reopened your case. Some new evidence came in. I sat down, heart pounding. She pulled out a printed screenshot, the same one I'd taken from the decoy file logs. My name, Ryan's name, the timestamps, the system warning, all there. Marissa said, we checked the server access. It looks like several files under your account were altered by another user, someone using Ryan's credentials. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or heartbroken. She asked, were you aware of this? I said quietly, not until recently. She nodded slowly. Thank you for being honest. We're investigating further, but it looks like you may have been right about someone undermining your work. When I walked out of that office, the hallway felt brighter somehow. For the first time in months, I wasn't the one under suspicion. Later that afternoon, Dana called me in. Her tone was softer now. Emma, I owe you an apology. I should have trusted you sooner. I smiled weakly. You didn't have the full picture. She sighed. We all thought Ryan was helping you. Turns out he was making sure you'd fail. Hearing it out loud made my stomach twist. I'd spent months defending him, covering for him, loving him, all while he sharpened the knife behind my back. When I left Dana's office, I saw him in the hallway talking to HR. His face was pale. He didn't look confident anymore, just cornered. That night at home, he tried to talk. Emma, whatever they told you, it's not what it looks like. I didn't answer. I walked straight past him, poured a glass of water, and said, I saw your emails, Ryan. He froze. You went through my computer? Yes, I said, because I couldn't understand how someone I loved could hate me enough to destroy everything I worked for. He sighed, rubbed his face, then said, I didn't hate you, Emma. I just couldn't stand watching you win. Those words hit me harder than anything he'd done. He continued, you became the person everyone listened to. And I was nothing I wanted to scream, cry, hit something. But instead, I just whispered, you were everything to me. I would have shared that success with you, but you didn't want to share it. You wanted to steal it. He looked down, silent. The next morning, he didn't show up for work. HR told me he'd taken personal leave. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone knew what was coming. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel vindicated, just empty. Because sometimes when the truth finally surfaces, it doesn't set you free. It just leaves you standing in the ruins of what you thought love was. If someone admitted they sabotaged you out of jealousy, could you ever forgive them? Or would that trust be gone forever? When HR finally called me back a week later, I already knew what the outcome would be. Ryan hadn't come back to the office. He'd stopped replying to messages, and even his desk looked abandoned. Still, walking into that glass conference room made my stomach twist. Marissa and Dana were both there. They looked tired. The kind of tired that comes from realizing you've trusted the wrong person. Emma, Marissa began softly, the investigation's complete. You've been cleared of all wrongdoing. I exhaled, not with relief, but with exhaustion. Months of anxiety, sleepless nights, humiliation, and now, just like that, it was over. Dana added, Ryan resigned this morning. We won't pursue legal action, but his access has been terminated permanently. I nodded. Okay. It was all I could say. Marissa smiled faintly. You've handled this with grace, Emma. Most people wouldn't. I wanted to tell her it wasn't grace, it was survival. But I just smiled back. When I walked out, people stared. Not the pitying kind of stares anymore, just quiet acknowledgement. I'd gone from being the office joke to the girl who stood her ground. But the thing about vindication, it doesn't fix the broken parts of you. At home, his side of the closet was empty, his toothbrush gone. The framed photo from our first anniversary, face down on the dresser. He didn't leave a note. No, I'm sorry. Just silence. That night, I sat on the couch scrolling through old texts, the late-night coffee runs, the inside jokes, the proud of you messages. It all felt like a different life. I kept asking myself, was it all fake? Or did he change somewhere along the way? A week later, HR announced my promotion again, this time officially. People congratulated me, brought cupcakes, tried to make it feel like a celebration, but I didn't feel proud. I felt heavy. Because every time I looked at my new office, I remembered the version of me who'd once dreamed of this moment. The girl who thought success meant being seen. Now I knew better. Success meant surviving. One afternoon, as I was packing some files, Dana walked in and said, you know, you could take a few weeks off. You've earned it, I smiled. Maybe I will. And that's when I decided I was done letting other people define my peace. I booked a solo trip, somewhere quiet, somewhere green, somewhere nobody knew me as the girl whose boyfriend ruined her career. On the flight, I opened my journal and wrote, closure isn't about hearing them say sorry. It's about realizing you deserve better and meaning it. When the plane took off, I didn't look back. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't running from what happened. I was walking toward who I was becoming. If someone you loved betrayed you at work, would you stay and rebuild or leave and start over somewhere new? It's been 6 months since everything fell apart, and somehow I'm still standing. Sometimes I reread my old journal entries just to remind myself how far I've come. The girl who once cried in her office, terrified of losing everything, she feels like a stranger now. After that trip, I didn't rush back into work. I slowed down. I learned how to breathe again. I started running in the mornings, cooking dinner for myself, going to the beach alone, all the things I used to think required company. Funny how solitude teaches you what self-worth really means. When I finally returned to the firm, the office felt different. Maybe it was me. I no longer needed to prove I belonged. I already knew I did. Marissa had moved on to another branch. Dana became the new department head. And I stepped into her old role, mentoring new hires, leading projects with confidence, not fear. One day during a lunch break, a junior analyst named Clara came up to me looking nervous. Emma, she said, can I ask, how do you deal with people doubting you just because you're young and ambitious? I smiled. By not letting their doubts sound louder than your own voice. That's when I realized my story wasn't about heartbreak or betrayal anymore. It was about becoming the person I needed when everything went wrong. Ryan never reached out again, not once. And surprisingly, that silence no longer hurts. It just feels finished. Sometimes I still think about him. Not with anger, but with acceptance. He was a chapter, not the whole book. Last week, HR held a leadership panel. They asked me to speak about resilience in the workplace. Standing on that stage, looking at all those young professionals, I said something that wasn't in my notes. You can rebuild from anything, but only if you stop trying to be who you were before it broke. The audience was quiet, listening, and in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. That night, I came home, poured myself a glass of wine, and opened my journal again. The last entry I wrote was simple. Dear future me, you did it. You didn't just survive the storm, you learned to dance in the rain. I closed the book, smiled to myself, and turned off the lights. Tomorrow would be another day, another pitch, another meeting, another challenge. But this time, I wasn't scared. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't living to prove anyone wrong. I was living to make myself proud. And that felt like the real promotion. Do you think forgiveness is necessary for closure, or is moving on without it just as powerful?